Well, hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to our red letter study, the words of Jesus. And the next couple of videos, we'll focus on some of his parables. Many parables, actually, sometimes, that happen in one specific moment. A dinner table, a lunch, if you will, given by a Pharisee. It's not the only time that Jesus is invited by the religious leaders. They were probably checking him out. And we actually see that in the beginning of the story. When the invitation, when the people are sitting down and eating, and somebody shows up to be healed on the Sabbath. And everybody's looking around saying, will Jesus actually heal on the Sabbath? Now, you might be asking, how did this story happen, considering that the person that they were having a meal inside the house? Well, you have to understand, though, that there, in the Middle East, especially back then, they had, for the dining room, actually a three-walled room. And the third wall was opened, so people from the outside could see and even hear the conversation of these important rich people. Many times, people of great riches or religious leaders, and you want to hear what the great rabbis have to say. And so the third, these dining rooms were actually big, three-walled, open area that people can kind of show up into. So if you read that kind of story and you see people showing up, now you know how. So this guy shows up. He's sick, and Jesus heals him. And he takes the opportunity to teach them. He says, don't you do good, like take care of your animal on the Sabbath? Well, even more to a child of God, we should do good on the Sabbath. Now take note of that, because we're going to see Jesus take opportunities during this meal to teach them. To teach through parables. We have to remind ourselves, parables are tools by which great divine truth is given to people by a story. It's meant to reveal or hide great truth. For some, they keep them blind. For others, it opens their eyes. And most parables have one main point. So you don't focus on the details, but the main teaching point. So, here's what happens. Our first parable. Now, he told the parable to those who were invited when he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them. So he sees an opportunity and he teaches. And don't miss that he's actually teaching the Pharisees and the invited guests and not necessarily his disciples. This isn't, if I could call it like this, biblical teaching to make disciples. This is calling others to the truth. And Jesus does that sometimes. He will sometimes give his disciples teachings to know how to be disciples, and others, he's just challenging them people about the truth. Like here. Now, if you're wondering like me, what's this idea of taking important places, right? Or as it says here, chosen the places of honor. Well, back then, you would want to sit close as possible to the person who invited you. Because the person who invited you, especially if it's a big meal, was somebody of importance. Somebody who was probably really rich. And we even see it throughout history with kings and princes and dukes. And you want to sit as close as possible to him, because that's the place of a consular. Right? That's somebody who would get to hear some great secrets of the king. You didn't have amplifiers back then. So only those close enough could get to hear what the king was talking about. Especially many times the tables were actually pretty large, so the other person next to him, face to face, couldn't probably hear, but the person right next here, to the right or to the left, could. And you want to dismiss again, because that showed you were important enough to hear the great secrets of this important person, the rabbi, or again, prince, king, dukes. So that was the idea of the place of honor. You wanted to be as close as possible, because that meant you were important enough to hear the great secrets of this man. And Jesus, seeing that, decided, let me teach you a little something, guys. And think of that. Think of that notion of seeking the place of importance. Seeking to get something great for yourself. Here's the parable. When you're invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down at a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person. And then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. Now again, like I said, we don't focus on the little details because that's not the point of parables. So why wedding feast? That's not important. What is it that when you get to the feast, what would people want to do if they want that place of honor? They would jump at that next seat, right? The guy who's the bride and the groom having the wedding feast are sitting right here. You want to be right there. You want to be there in advance if you can, so you can get that seat. But in this circumstance, where they're the honored guests, and they see someone they like maybe their parents or their favorite uncle, well, they might say, could you move down? This is for my uncle. Now the thing is, by then, probably a lot of other people have been sitting down, so you'll have to get up and walk all the way to the end of the table where you won't hear anything. And everybody's gonna watch you walk all the way to the end of the table. I guess he wasn't that important. I guess he wasn't a great counselor because they sent him right back down there. Right, the walk of shame, as you might call it. And this is what Jesus says. This is what happens to this person. He jumped at the opportunity to be honored and being great, and instead he was humbled and lowered. This is instead what you should do, Jesus says. But when you are invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. Now, take note of at least two things. The first is this humility that he's talking about. It's something that's active. Just like it was for this act of pride, of seeking for that honor, it's active. This is just not just about mindset, right? Think low thoughts. Think you're nothing. Then you'll be humble. No, it's about actively demonstrating humility in circumstances. Here, in a palpable way, Jesus says, you have a choice of seats. You got there early. Choose the one that's much further down. You know, think about, okay, you'll probably have one of his parents next to him, that's 2 seats. And maybe a favorite uncle, he's got a few friends, that's another 10 seats. I'll go to 28 seats, all the way down. You really seek far away to make sure that all his favorite friends are close to him. Because that's when he may come to you and say, no, what are you doing in 28 seats? Come higher. I want you close to me. Come on. And that's the second part. There is repercussions, or in this sense, more rewards. Consequences, if you will. Positive or negative. Bible speaks on that. Even in this reality of grace, there's still consequences, or rewards, or repercussions, like we saw in the first part. There's always reaping and sowing. There's always something that might happen. And here's Jesus saying, because you were seeking actively to choose humility, you were honored. And that's when Jesus gets to the punchline, the application of this parable. I love that Jesus gives us that. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Again, reward, repercussion, consequences. One action will have a reaction. It's not only law. Don't fall into that kind of trap. God is still in control of these things, but he still shows us that there is principles. God sovereignly controls them. But there's still a reality that if you humble yourself, you'll have exaltation. If you exalt yourself, you might just be humbled. If you're actually seeking to be important, you might lose everything. That's again. But if you're truly seeking other people's needs first, and not to put yourself first, you might just get yourself put first by others instead. See, I love that these words are kind of echoed by Peter himself later in his epistles, when he says, humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that, here's the purpose, at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. I connect it all together, right? This humbling yourself is, Lord, I don't understand what's going on. This is very difficult, but I cast this care upon you. I'm not going to try to fight back against it, declare and decree it's going to change, or tell you what to do. But I'm just going to say, Lord, this is difficult. Please help me. And who knows how God can turn that. Right? You remain in that humble state of saying, I don't deserve anything. I'm just asking for grace. And God might just give you an abundance of grace. and exalt you in the process, right? It's all connected together. It's even connected to the next verse, by the way. The one that we might know very much. Verse 8. Be sober-minded. Be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Too many times we take this verse as spiritual warfare, period. Well, it's connected to 6 and 7, right? Be humble before the Lord, so he can exalt you. What did the devil do? What's his great sin? Exaltation. Trying to make himself better than God. When the devil comes, the first bite, if you will, of this enemy, just like it was in the garden with the snake, is to make us prideful. I believe it's connected together. What Peter's saying here is connected to what he just said. Be watchful of the devil because he's going to try to pump you up. So you'll exalt yourself and make yourself better than you should instead of humble yourself and say, your will be done, Lord. That's when the Lord's going to say, I'm going to give you my will, and it's going to be pretty amazing because you humbled yourself. But be watchful of the devil because he'll come in saying, don't humble yourself before God. You tell him what to do. You get your stuff. That's the devil. Be careful of that. So, simple parable, right? Now let's live it out, brothers and sisters. And let's be honest, that's harder than it is to do and to say. On that note, be blessed.